If you're a parent in an underserved community whose school hasn't been performing for some time, you don't care what the school is called. You're not thinking about who's running the school. You're not thinking about all, any of the other kinds of conversations that sometimes are politically motivated and or otherwise. The one thing that you're thinking about is, how do I get my kid the best possible education? That's it.
I remember when I was elected as a state representative and meeting one of the local state senators for the first time. I extended my hand and introduced myself. I was happy to be around my new colleagues and my peers in politics and to start to get to know people. And the first thing that senator said to me was, "We don't like vouchers. We don't like choice, and we don't want charter schools." Hadn't even said hello. That was my welcome to politics.
There's no such thing as one size fits all, and somehow as a nation we got into this place where the school that was closest to your house was the only choice, which in itself is not a choice for families. And parents are best positioned to decide what type of school is best for their child. And so choice speaks to parents knowing best and honoring that about their child. I like to use a really simple example. There are grocery stores throughout Metro Atlanta, and no one tells us we can only go to one grocery store. We get to choose which grocery store has the items we want, we need. How is it we can do that but not choose which school is best for our child?
The school choice movement has been around for quite some time, and it began with magnet schools. So I had the ability as a student to be able to select the type of institution that I felt like was quality for myself growing up. And so that was through the form of choosing a magnet school program. So to give parents or to give students the ability to select the education that they deserve has been a public choice for quite some time.
Being the mayor of a city, my economic development depends on the status of my school. When I was at Morehouse College, though, a man by the name of Benjamin Elijah Mays said to me that every child should have the experience of a public education. And I didn't know what that meant at first. But there are different walks of life, depends on where you're coming from. I do believe that people can choose. If you have the wherewithal to get your child a better education, oh, by God means, do it. But education is bigger than just where you put that child. There's education that he has to learn beyond the school walls. There's personalities that children have to adapt to beyond the school wall that you may have them in. And some kids don't really adapt to that. Personally, my kids were in private schools until the 6th grade. And I moved them out of private schools into public schools.
I think that it's important to have a vision, and that we've got to write the vision and to make it plain so that the people can see it. And then when the vision is conceived and plainly written, that we've got to evangelize others, persons of like mind, to come on board. But an important quote that I always use from Dr. Mays is not failure, low aim is sin. And we ought not to be guilty of sinning because of low aim in our lives. That we ought to strive to reach higher and higher heights to the end that the world will be better when we leave it than it was when we found it. Amen.
In many cases, parents, students, as well as teachers feel trapped in the school zone, if you will, that they're in. And the understanding that what is currently there doesn't have to be, meaning that you have a choice in terms of providing a high quality education for your children, for your students, for your community. I think it is a right for them to work toward finding the right choice for them. Choices are important for students in the classroom. You want to make sure that they get an understanding of what the content is, having a choice of how to display it. It should be the same thing about education. How does my child best learn? How do I best teach? How does this community need to change in terms of making sure that the educational outcomes for this particular community are there? Sometimes that means that this may not necessarily be the school for you. Maybe you need to find something out, maybe a magnet school where they can look for particular things that interest the particular student. But also it means if it is a failing school, that there should be a choice for the community to make a difference.
I was elected in 2002 as the first African American to serve in the legislature from Cobb County at the age of 22. And at the time I was not a parent, and a couple years later got married, then had a child, and my whole view of the world and certainly education changed. When you have a child, when you have to make decisions about their education and what's best for them, you start taking the politics out and focusing on what's best for the child. And so I slowly became a stronger and stronger advocate for public education, for making sure that every kid had access to a high quality education. And eventually that advocacy turned into becoming an advocate for parent choice.
Many of the legislators who were opposed to charter schools and stood on the opposite side of that issue were allies on a number of other issues. And what I learned over the next 8 years is it was not a safe space to be a Democratic legislator in the Georgia General Assembly and be pro-charter schools, be pro-school choice, be pro-education reform. Anything that was seen as a disruption to the status quo, to the system that it existed, the delivery system of education that has existed for many decades and failed our children for many decades, was what they wanted to maintain. And I just wouldn't accept it. I just could not accept it.
If you believe in the work that we're doing, you're not going to be someone that is going to have a big team. You're not going to be someone that's going to have the ability to get everyone to stand with you and hold your hands. But you got to remember what the goal is. And the goal is our children.